So welcome on gamification part. Let me introduce me and my colleagues there. We will entertain you for next hour and a half about what's gamification and how you can use it for your business and industry. We kind of make an dramaturgy, so we start with what is gamification and we end with what gamification isn't, but how you can use proper games for your business. And let me introduce my co-speakers. I take it from my side. Peter Vandenberg from Sweden. He's doing mostly virtual realities and gamification as well. Now it's time for a clap, you know. It's like, yeah. Awesome. Then Oliver Šinko, founder of Ludocraft. It's a Slovak gamification company. It's, awesome. You get the grip. Nice. And Matusz Kirchmeier, who using gaming technologies transferred into industry to get better results. So yeah, awesome. And my name is Peter Pouchlý, and I'm do gamification in Czech Republic. Clapping is not necessary right now. Thanks. You will get an opportunity to ask question through the whole hour and few minutes more into Slido. You probably already aware about Slido, so remember we room C, which means if you will ask question to the other rooms, it can be fun, but quite meaningless right here. So focus on room C if you want to ask question. We will answer the question at the end. So don't worry that you will be forgotten. No, we will read it. And if you want to support any other question on Slido, you just can click on like. It gets more likes, and you know, the winner takes all. So if you want to be your question answered, maybe convince colleagues around you to give you a plus to get a bigger voting chance. Well, I think for a short introduction, it's quite all. It's not so fun as it sounds. So I'd like to introduce you Peter Vandenberg with his presentation. Peter, it's yours. That's the time. Awesome.
All right. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction to gamification and virtual reality. We have a couple of concepts that we're working with that I'd like to show you. And this is me. I'm Petter. I have a background in information design, so designing things and visualizations in a very informative way. I have an interest and some experience in human-centered design and user-centered design. I do a lot of 3D modeling for games, that's game-optimized meshes and stuff like that, and create games and virtual reality experiences on a daily basis. So, I come from Swedish ICT, which is a research institute. We allocate funding from EU funding, but also directly from the Swedish government to do research together with smaller companies, tech companies, and get an infusion into the industry. Basically, the entire reason we're all here, getting the industry to get more into new technology and doing things a little bit differently. So we're going to talk about gamification today. And in order to understand gamification, we just need some basics in just plain game design, actually. So I'm going to go through just some ideas of what makes a good game. And I have an example here from just golf. I hope this is something everyone can sort of relate to. And I'm going to introduce a word here, which is mechanics. When we're talking about mechanics in game design, basically what we mean is the rules of the game, right? So the things that you interact with as a player and that makes the system or the game talk back and gets this interesting and interactive experience. So in the game of golf, for example, you have a pretty clear goal. The goal is to get the ball into the cup, into the hole, right? It's very simple. That's the goal. But you can't just pick up the ball, walk over to the hole and drop it in. That would make a very bad and boring game. So we have some mechanics, some rules that forces you to interact in a different way. We have the club, for example. That's the one you have to use. That's the rule. And there are also other challenges on the field, so that the course, for example, is not necessarily straight. There are other obstacles like bunkers or different length of grass and water obstacles that you have to compass. So this makes you as a player have to do different things. You have to apply new tactics all the time in order to make it to the goal. And this is important for any general game design. So it turns out that digital games, when we're talking about video games and computer games, they're pretty good at this, at least the good kinds of games. They have a very clear goal, a very set agenda, or at least a very clear direction for the player to go. And I'm sure you've seen some of these things before, where you can allocate points and you get to levels and you can have badges and stuff that rewards your progress. And if you do this in a good way, you can really motivate the player to keep going forward and to understand that they're reaching that goal that they set in the beginning. But we also see examples of this not being used very well, and I'm sure that some of the other speakers will talk about this as well. So now, talking about gamification. So gamification is the concept of applying game mechanics. Remember, mechanics is just rules of the game. And game design thinking into making non-game activities more fun and engaging. So that's like the definition of gamification. So talking again about these goals and the challenges, there are some hardships when we're designing for gamification, because we're using game thinking, like we said, in game design principles, to do something in the real world instead of just making a fun, interesting experience. When we're designing just a game, then we have a pretty easy way of creating the challenge or the goal within that system. So everything is very interesting. The challenge and the goal meet and cause this interesting balance. But in the industry, for example, there are already challenges. There are already goals. The company itself might have goals of production they have to meet, or the employees might be more or less motivated. These are mechanics that we have to take into consideration. So these are the two research projects that I'll be talking about that we at Swedish ICT is doing right now. So it's one that has to do with the gamification of the industry from Skutskärbruk, the paper mill that I showed you the slide of just now, and then the ENCODE project. ENCODE stands for Information and Competence on Demand, which is a VR project. So yeah, Stora Enso, Skutskärbruk. This is one of those business partners that we have, that we work together with in this research project. And this paper mill basically takes in big lumps of wood. They chop it up into wood chips and boil it in these big furnaces that you see in the background. And just make this paper mass and extrude it on a plane, and it becomes paper. So we're talking about how to motivate and to maybe change some of the behaviors of the operators that work in this place. We have some challenges here that are already in place. So, for example, the physical environment. You can see on the left side there is Susanne, my working colleague. Her and I had a week when we did some work as an operator on this paper mill, just to get an idea of what it's like to be an operator and what's hard, what's not. So we see that there's a very physical environment. It's demanding, for example, to go outside of the control room. There's a big control room. It's pretty nice. It has AC and it's cool and it's a good environment. But as soon as you step outside into the factory, it can be pretty dirty, it can be pretty noisy. It's usually too hot or too cold, depending on the different environments. And there are people working here that are very good at running this mill optimized very, very well. But there are also people that are not as experienced that have to learn. And we have this problem with knowledge transfer. There's not a clear platform for the more experienced users to give their knowledge to those who are less experienced. So there's one just ongoing project for one of those ideas that we have for gamification. One thing that we have to do in this paper mill, which is very important, is that you go out and take samples in the different machines. They all have some pH values or pressure, stuff like this. You get this information in the control room. But you also need to go out and make sure that those measurements are actually accurate. So when, if an operator doesn't feel motivated to go out and do this because of the environmental constraints, then we can motivate them by having this little currency system, which is, if you see on the slide here, there's a value, a sort of money, a fictive money, which is risen if someone is not taking a sample for a long time. You get more and more money. And then you can plan this together with your team. You go and you take the sample so that every time you get new samples that are updated in the lists, and this is information that's needed for making sure that the mill is used properly. Yeah, I'll just jump through some of these slides. I think I'm running quite short on time. Yeah, we're making a lot of ideas around this concept right now. So here's one, a KPI game where we're just planning to have the different shift teams. If we look at shift A here, for example, and shift B. So shift A can be rewarded for running the mill according to certain KPI, key performance indicators. And they can also be rewarded if the team after them, which is team B here, can make a good run as well. So what we're trying to do here is to encourage the first shift, shift A, to talk more to shift B when they're doing a debrief and a brief of what's happening during the night, if there's been a malfunction, stuff like this. So we want to get them, give team A here a bonus if team B is doing well. That means that if they run well and they give information in a good way, then team B will be running well and team A will be making more points as well. Yeah, so this is one of my passion topics. Talking about VR is a little bit like dancing about architecture. It doesn't really make sense. But we're using virtual reality for one of our other research projects that I'm going to talk about right now. And I wish I could just give you all the ability to see into this mask that this guy's wearing on his face right now, because VR is pretty amazing. I'm sure some of you have tried it. If you haven't, make sure you get the opportunity, because it's pretty cool. One of the things that you can do with VR, this is just a fun fact, this is a school in Sweden that took all of their kids on a field trip to the pyramids of Egypt in virtual reality with this simple Google Cardboard, which is very basic virtual reality experience. Not very good experience, but still, they got to go to Egypt. Then they could talk about it, evaluate it, use it for education. So how can we use this in industry? We're doing this project together with Gproc, which is a plaster manufacturer. They manufacture these plaster walls. So it's a company located in Sweden, very local. And the idea is that if you're new in this factory, then you're given an introduction of how to run these machines as an operator. If you're an operator that needs to understand how every machine works, you follow someone, a mentor, someone who's more experienced, that will show you, hey, this is this machine, this works like this. But there's some problems with this, because it's not very standardized. If one mentor will give you an introduction and someone else does another one, then maybe their working methods will differ in the long run. And it can lead to costly errors or, even worse, personal injury. What Gproc has right now is a Excel file, basically, which is an SOP, a standard operating procedure. So you read it, and it says exactly what you should do with each machine. But we think we can do this a little bit safer, and a little bit more interactive. So we're doing it with virtual reality. So in this way, we can have operators just staying safe and sound in a room next door, not out on the factory floor causing damage or injury, but they can actually do these training sessions in an interactive way, in a very immersive way. And we want to study the effects of the spatial awareness as well, when you actually have this entire room around you that's interactive and teaches you something. It really changes the learning curve. Yeah, so think about it like a like a pilot simulator, but for operators instead. So this is what the application looks like right now. Like I said, both of these projects are ongoing right now, so we're still brainstorming ideas and taking different angles all the time. But this is one of the machines in this long factory line. So the idea here is for an operator to be able to switch out one of these spools here. I'm not sure if you can see my laser, but this is a paper spool. So you have to work through the machinery in a very specific way, specific sequence, in order to make this work and not to, cause any errors. And VR is just generally interesting also because of some of these input devices, like what we have right now when we're talking about gaming as well. We're using keyboards and mouse if we want to play a game, for example. And what has happened with virtual reality is we have these new input devices that just gives us a completely new level of interaction. What we see here is the HTC Vive, which has these tracked controllers. You pick them up, you hold them, and it's like having hands, your hands, one-to-one tracked in virtual reality. So you can pick up objects, you can even juggle objects, because they're very, very precise. And this could be a future industry operator. One of these kids of the Y generation may be working away at these industry places. So, because this kid will learn to interact with games and game systems in a way that you or I we're probably a little bit too old to do this, but they'll get used to it, and they'll expect this to be standard when they're going out into the workplace. They will ask, if they get to work in the industry, why doesn't it work like this? Why don't I have the level of interaction that I have in games? What you see on the right here is a application called Job Simulator. And Job Simulator is, it should be very boring. It sounds very boring. You're simulating working in an office environment, for example, but just this level of interaction with these controllers and the immersion of virtual reality makes it so interesting. So we should be able to use this. And I think I'm out of time, so I won't go much into details into these last points, but I just like the way that research, especially at SIX and Swedish ICT, is working when it comes to connecting these companies and connecting, for example, me, who's an information designer and don't usually work with big companies like GPROC. I got the opportunity to start working with them and developing this virtual reality application, for example. So it really works that way. And whenever you get the chance to just help out a game designer, or when you see big gaming convents and stuff like this, take them seriously, because it really can both boost economy and, you never know, it might be training the next gen operator. Who knows? That's all from me, and this is my contact information. Ask questions through the application, and thank you for listening.
Oh, we already have a question. It's nice. Before the next speaker will come and entertain you a bit about more gamification, I have a question for you. In fact, that will be two questions. Do you aware about what gamification is, or did you been aware what the gamification is before you came into the room? Let's ask in 3 levels. If you have no clue about what is gamification, or you just maybe heard the word, but you still don't have a clue, please raise a hand now. Just 0, nada, nothing. Okay, nice. If you have at least a brief, let's say, perspective about what gamification is, like you read the article or 2, or have some, I know what's gamification, something like with the games, without the games, please raise a hand right now. Okay, and who think, I know what's the gamification, and basically I came here because I want to hear something more from other perspective, please raise a hand. Okay, 2 of you. Thanks, just, it's better for us to know at least the level. So maybe we will discuss more later. But now, let me introduce you Oliver Šimko, who is the local one from Slovakia, founder of Ludocraft, who will speak how he do gamification for business. It's clap the hand.
Thank you, and thank you, Peter, both of you actually, for a nice introduction, and thank you for you to come, especially it's short before lunch, so that's very brave of you. And so, yeah, we have been doing gamification for 2 years, and now I would like to share some of our insights, especially in terms of how maybe we can react for the job crisis or the shift of the acquiring skills or acquiring talents to your companies. And so what I would like to think about gamification is that gamification is some sort of a missing link. A missing link between the company needs and the desires of the future talents and on the future workforce or the actual workforce. And to understand this connection, I think it's good to maybe point out some of the challenges that I think the current industries are facing. So I think now we came to the point that many industries are quite sophisticated and quite automated. And so our job positions or our employees' profiles are quite complex thing. So let's, for instance, if you can raise hands, if you think you can describe your job or what you basically do in less than 5 seconds. Right. So if you can, then you are either lucky or have a really quick imaginations, which is both great for you. But for the rest of us, it's kind of hard, right? So I recently reviewed the job offers on our local portal called Profesia, and there were positions called like business intelligence and development, and I was like, well, that sounds pretty cool, but I don't have any clue what is it. And take my example, I'm a gamification designer, and I would need to spend another 15 minutes to explaining what exactly we do. So we have some abstract information that we want to sell, that we want to attract people that, okay, let's work as a business intelligence and development guy. But it's hard, right? The second challenge is that the quality people, the A-list people are sort of mythical creatures, right? We know there are somewhere out there, right? But it's hard to attract them, and it's even harder to keep them, because I recently met a guy from the global corporation, and he told me that, especially in Bratislava region, we can speak about 0 unemployment rate, or that, in other hand, that all useful people are currently employed. So the only way you can do is to steal it from the other companies, right? And the people who are satisfied with their jobs, they are not very much looking for a switch, and if they do, the money is not necessarily the biggest motivator, right? So you have to talk about them, about increasing their impact, to show them that, okay, by working with us, we do some more meaningful stuff, and you can have more autonomy, etc., etc. And you have to find a tool how to communicate this to these people. And the third challenge that I think is connected with gamification is that, of course, we have some lower interests in traditional industries from the Generation Y and the millennials. And the second point to millennials is, of course, we as I am the part of this damned generation, we are used to different kind of interactions. And that's something we will require or are requiring from the future job positions, etc. So I think that the gamification, in fact, can help you because it offers opportunity to connect these dots by creating comprehensive and engaging experience. And now let's take a look how these engaging experience can look like and how you can create them. So the first point I would like to point out is that gamification allows you to create an immersive experience which is both complex and yet comprehensible. Take a look at this picture. It's made from Marriott's hotel chain, and it was a simple Facebook game that you can play, and it sets you in the Marriott Hotel's kitchen. And it was divided in a small tasks that you can actually feel what is it like to work on one of their kitchen. And the point is that it's such a complex job position, right? You need to take care of many things. You need to delegate. You need to prioritize, etc. But it was divided in a small, affordable challenges that you can do just for fun. and yet you had the chance to understand, okay, what is this job about? What's the culture of this company about? And you gave a bigger and deeper understanding of what is it like to be a part of this company. Secondly, games like these or gamification approach like this allows you to be kind of transparent in a way of, okay, if you work with us, these could be the day-to-day challenges that will occur on your job, and you can expect them, and you can even assess whether, okay, this is for me, or I'm not sure if it's fine for me. The third point, I think, is that you're not only promoting yourself, you also reach for the assessment tool for you. Take a second example, which did one of the branches of UK security service, and they need to reach out for audience who is able to crack the code, who can be the white hat hackers. And as the standard recruitment tools suddenly came out of the breath, they came up with this simple challenge that says, okay, if you dare, please crack this code and write the answer. And the response was amazing because it's a simple challenge. You are safe at your home. You can have some fun. And yet, if you are successful, you know that, okay, I have some serious skills that can be used for a greater good. And so this branch of Secret Service gave them an assessment tool which was not perceived as an assessment, because games are amazing in a way that they change the player's mindset. Like, how many of you like the macroeconomical decision makings or micromanagement? Is it someone who is really into it and enjoy it? Okay, okay. But many of people love games like StarCraft or games like World of Warcraft, or in fact games like Candy Crush. And these games are quite cognitive demanding, and you do some sort of decision making, but you don't care because there are other things that you like about these games. And if you tell the people that it's just a funny challenge that you can try, they tend to provide better results, and so it's better results also for you to assess whether this guy has some serious skills that you want to have in your company. And of course, today's market is still dominated by some written down job offers or maybe some inside videos. But if you create some interactive and immersive experience, then you have, of course, some market added value and competition value. So it's not only a recruiting tool, it could be also a marketing tool. And so I think what it's interesting that we all love to play games because it's kind of feels like we have some feeling of development, of accomplishment, of just being better person. And gamification allows you to work with such a basic human traits or motivation. And if you tied it to your company's cause, then you can create a positive connection, right? Secondly, you can offer a holistic view of your company's culture and benefits. If you place the player inside the daily routine when he can experience what it is like to meet new colleagues, what it is like to communicate here, you are able to provide much more richer experience for them, just like in cooperation to watch videos or read about your company. Of course, if you provide positive feedback to the people and gave them some extra value, then they are not only views your company as a, okay, this is some company that I will work with and receive money from it, but as a company that actually cares about me, actually cares about the employees, and try to build positive culture. So from my perspective and from what we learned from our projects is that the money can work as a motivation to start working for the company, but only for a certain level. And if your employees are in the company for a longer time, they will look for other things that should satisfy their needs. And basically, it is autonomy, sense of mastery that I am progressing towards something, and of course to see purpose. What is my purpose in this company? And these three things is that gamification knows very well and can address to the players. And I think that's a nice end of my presentation. So I was kind of quick. I still have 4 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can shout it loud or write it on the Slido. And thank you very much.
Well, we save a little time for questions at the end, so don't worry, you don't miss them. There are some really interesting. Maybe I will say a little bit about the gaming industry, because most of gamification concept is out of the classical digital games. You probably can say, hey, digital games, you know, it's for kids, I'm not playing it. So the statistic is that now the most common, most typical player is a woman 32 to 37 years old. It's the most typical player because virtual games or digital games aren't just hardcore gaming you remember from 90s. You know, all these geeks in sweaty t-shirts playing on a keyboard whole night. It's done because now typical gaming is a casual gaming on social networking and on cell phones, and most of these games are quite simple. Someone should say stupid, and yeah, you're right. But people are still playing it. It's kind of like you know, doing something mindless, but it's entertaining and fun. Just guess what's the most successful game, digital game still, with biggest revenue all around. Just name the game, just try it. Angry Birds. Okay, it's nice, but it's definitely not in first 5. Another tip, just Warcraft. Nice. It's like 5th, but still not the first. Farmville. No, but Zynga, the creator of Farmville on Facebook in the year 2011 was a bigger company than Electronic Arts Sports, which was the #1 since then. Now they gone because many reasons. No, it's different game, and I'm quite sure every single of you know it. Pokemon is the third. So, another tip. Okay, it's a Tetris. It's a game from 1984, but it still have so many clones and so many platforms that it's the most you know, valuable game according to revenue. The second one is Mario, Super Mario from Nintendo, so it's on many devices as well. So it's not complicated games, but they are quite entertaining, and the reason why people play them is partly because they have clever mechanics, and these mechanics was something what was Oliver talking about. Okay, enough of me. Now it's time for Matusz Kirchmeier, who's using the another part of gaming technology for the business. Please clap a hand. It's Matusz.
Hello. So I'm coming from the games industry. Weird, yeah. So my name is Matusz Kirchmeier. I'm coming from the games industry, and we are doing games since a long time, and it's something that very evolved in the time. We can see this in the last 20, 30 years, and even the games themselves started as something very just entertaining, but it has a lot of elements in it. So I want to talk more about our experience and our company. So we are a Slovak company here in Košice called Matsuko, and we have a background in the computer games and the technologies we built in the past in the projects. So some of our projects you can see the team worked on are different games that were done by big studios like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, or others. And myself, I was working on these projects in France and Canada, and I came back to Slovakia a few years ago, and I started this company because I thought that we can still do more games here in Slovakia, and we can also bring new elements to these games. So the way how the games are evolving, it's not only about having just the pure, I would say, challenge, reward, entertainment, but it's also about bringing something extra into these games. So it's not only the games for the children, for the teenagers, and the way how the industry evolved, we can see that these games are changing. So we are trying to bring more and more mature content, more and more different themes. So it's not only about some fights or just puzzles. And this is exactly what we are trying. And we are mixing even more technologies together. It's not only about the 3D, the visualization aspect of the games, but it's also about bringing some content which is more accessible, which is used and explored now with the new technologies like virtual reality or augmented reality. So you don't need necessarily a special device like a PlayStation, which is not accessible for all of us, but you can use just your mobile, or with augmented reality, you don't need any device. You just come to some place and you are immersed in the environment right there. And the content itself is also much more adaptive these days. We are trying to do much more intelligent avatars, gameplays, and the artificial intelligence is something that will help us to bring much more interesting content in the future. And with all these technologies, we can do much more than just games. So in our company, we are doing still some games. So I will show you first our big projects we are doing here in Slovakia. But I will show you then also other projects we are doing with the same game technologies in many different other domains, like education or training in the industry, also for the promotion, marketing, and even games or serious games with more social aspect. So I will start with one of our big projects we are doing here in Slovakia. So this is a sci-fi game. It's called Mandate. It started with a successful Kickstarter, one of the biggest success in Slovakia's with Slovakian team. And we are building a game which is a universe which is more for the players that are interested in political and moral choices. So it's very story driven, and you can always have a possibility to do some choices. The player can impact the story, and that's the goal of the whole experience there. I will show you a very quick video. This is a teaser we presented in E3 this year. It's the biggest computer games show in Los Angeles. The music was produced also here in Slovakia by our amazing composer, Lubica Čekovská. So with this kind of complex game, we have a big team with a lot of talented, skilled developers here in Slovakia. And what we are doing, we are composing it with, mixing it with experienced senior artists, game designers coming from big studios from Germany, France, US, and UK. And as a whole, we have quite complex technology we can use in all these other domains, of course, as we discussed before which can be explored in different areas. So one of our games or project we are doing, for example, in France, this is a project for the schools, and it's an interactive 3D game on iPads or touchscreens, and the kids overall, the friends in schools or other educational institutions, they can learn about their future jobs. So they learn how the future will shape the industry, their everyday life, and what are the new types of jobs they will need to be prepared for. So it's a very, I would say, entertaining game, but at the same time they learn important message and they start to think about their future while playing this kind of applications. We are doing similar projects also for the industry, mostly in the training, so people can learn through an interactive way what they should be prepared for. They can learn it in the virtual environments, and then of course they're prepared for the real environments. We have other domains we are using our technologies in. It's more in a scientific field, so we started a scientific experiment in Zoo in Bordeaux, and we have the possibility with the augmented reality to revive 100 million years old dinosaurs and bring them in their real life. So we are experimenting, we are working with the paleontologic community to see what are the different behaviors, what are the different rules between a male and female, how it was possible, possibly at that time, and what are different aspects of their everyday life. So what we brought in this installation, we tried to do not just some sequences of videos, but we tried to really to do with the artificial intelligence an environment which is 3 times bigger than this one, where these dinosaurs can they can live the way that they react to all the different sensors. So for example, for the weather interaction, when it's winter, they're looking for a sun. During the summer, they're looking for shadows. And the most important thing is that they can react also to the people going in there. So what we can see is that people want to interact with them, so we bring them some entertainment, but they learn about these animals, of course. So one of the things, they can enter the area, they can take pictures, and the raptors react to them, and they come to see them closer, of course. It's very interesting for the children, but at the same time, we see people coming back, and this installation is working down there for 2-3 years, and it's attracting a lot of visitors. What we are doing in other domains is mostly promotion or product presentation, because we see the potential for the marketing people to use these tools to not only show and showcase their product, but they can let the people interact with it. So what we are doing is mostly applications where people, for example, in this case, they can see the machine or product and they can play with it. So they can look at the different parts, they can try to see how they can work with these, how these parts can be customized. They can really change and interact with the product of the client, and this way the client can really explain better to their customers what is their product about. On some other promotional also applications, we're trying to play more the visual aspects, of course, of their product. So we've done different projects with Michelin, and we are bringing not only the visual elements, but we are also trying to bring the people to be there and play with the content of the promotional campaign. So in this case, for example, in the Auto Salon in Paris, we can see that people can play with the Michelin Man, and they can interact with him, they can play different small mini games, and through this several scenes, they can learn about Michelin tires, about their security parameters, what are the different aspects of these tires, and they can learn more about this product. At the same time, they enjoying the experience, so they are really more involved than later to the brand and to the product itself. And in this case, it's very interactive, of course, because we're tracking the players, the people. We can we can simulate the whole content to be much more adaptive, and this way the whole experience is much more playful, I would say. And last example I want to show you, it's very different. It's more about how games can also impact social aspects. We are living here, not necessarily in Europe, but also on other parts on the planet. So we're building also games for kids in Lebanon, for the youth to learn about the way how they should interact each other. So these are social games where, in this case, like Lebanon, we can see that there's a mix of different nations and different religions, and through the games, these youth can interact together, and then they can, of course, be able to also solve, for example, some problems. So we are doing, in this case, a game which is specially focused on how the kids should learn the conflict resolution.
حدا يأمر أمر
صار مشروع الذي بهاللحظات بخفف فيها حد التوتر، شو كانت العوامل يلي خلت هذا التوتر يخف؟
اللعبة الهدف كان تبعها كيف فينا نحل نزاع، كيف بيكون كبير، كيف منصغره ونصغره ونصغره. ما في قتل، ما في. كثير عجبتني الفكرة، كثير سلمية اللعبة. اللعبة عن حل النزاع. مين بيقول لي شي مرة صار معه نزاع وحله؟
أنا وخيي كنت أنا عم ألعب بالحبل، إذا بده بياخذها مني، بعدين صرنا نتخانق، عم نحن لعند ماما، قالت لنا على الدور بتلعبوا. كتير حلوة، إنه فيها إنه تنشيط للذاكرة، بتخلي إنه الواحد لما بيتلقى شيء مشكلة دغري بيحلها.
أهم شغلة كانت عم تعلمنا اللعبة ما نستسلم، هن كمان حاطين براسهم إنه نحن ما رح نستسلم، رح نوصل للحل.
So this is just a few examples. So I wanted to just show you that it's not only about the games you know from PlayStation or mobiles, but these same technologies, we can use it in very different domains. And it's something that I think will shape the future, of course. Thank you.
I think I will explain a little bit about what's the difference between the game and the game as an impact. As a game designers, we call them serious games, which means these games aren't only for the purpose of fun, but for some purpose of education or just awareness about something. And it's basically the game, it's not the gamification, but we call it serious game because the real reason of the game isn't just the fun. And the last thing, I think, for better understanding, it takes to be a little bold, to implement something new. And sometimes time isn't the perfect timing. I remember the first augmented realities, like you have normal reality like a newspaper or magazine, and you're using your cell phone to add some extra virtual layer. And lots of companies were experimenting with this in magazines like Forbes or Bild, and that was basically automotive companies, like in years 2010, and then try to make it moving. Like you put your cell phone and you see the car moving, which is nice, but in current time, most of the cell phones were, slow, and it was kind of crappy and bad resolution. So most of adventuring companies just forget about it and said, no, these virtual realities, it doesn't work. And then Lego came, and all the Lego catalogs have this virtual reality part. But because it's focused on different generation, and to be honest, the bricks are more simple to make them in virtual reality, even with cheaper technology. It's starting to be amazing, and nowadays most of consumers of Lego catalog is using the application of Lego to finding another layer of augmented reality to see the model of the Lego from all sides. And there will be the time when even the companies will come back to the augmented realities advertisement, but maybe there was, like 3 years ahead. So if you wondering like, okay, it looks nice, but it's definitely not for me or our employees because we are kind of old-fashioned or something like that. Yeah, it can be true, but still there's like 40% of labor market which is now consistent of Generation Y and Generation Z. And for these people, it's quite normal, and we already have technologies who are able to work with that. Okay, and now it's time to introduce myself, so please give me my presentation. Yeah. Thank you, I appreciate it. Well, my colleagues talk, it starts with gamification, like a hardcore concept, and it moves slowly to the games. I personally, where's the clicker? Yeah, thanks. I personally I will talk about the both, but I will focus a little bit about the games and how we can use them in the industry, and I'll show you some real examples. Basically, I will warn you a little, then we find a way how we can manage the changing situation of the market as well as demands from employees. Then I will tell something little about design, and then I show you some case studies. My name is Peter Pouchli, and I'm, let's say, a captain, like CEO of a free company called of Moravia. We start as a game designers, but we do HR consultancy and gamification, HR mostly, last few years. We are the #1 on the Czech market, and the reason why we are the #1 is because there are no other #2s or #3s, so it's kind of easy to win. But we do it with a lot of big companies, even in industry, not only ICT or banking institutions. Reason why we're working with these companies is because they have a lot of money and they are able to pay us. We're quite expensive. The perspective of gamification, sorry, I take my paper because I wrote down some notes, and of course I forgot most of them. If we check the perspective of gamification, there's lots of different angle of view. The basic gamification, most of you probably know, is about the points, badges and levels and leaderboards. And you can use it in some loyalty programs, in marketing. In fact, rating in schools is stupid, but still principle of gamification. You get A, B, C's, and each half year you get an achievement as a sort of diploma, and then you play the basic level, then the advanced level of basic school, then you go to high school, then you go to university, then you go to second level of university. Then if you are, not clever enough, you stay there for like forever, and you get another levels, and you get a shortage before your name and after your name, and you feel better and better player, getting mastery in some field. So basically, it's like core of gamification. The real gamification is about the mixing these things together to create some impact, to make it clever way, and to make it a little more entertaining with some story, with hooks, with engagement. And then something which Jane McGonigal, professor of MIT, who believes that games can change the world, called playful design, which is basically the game which reason is something else than just to have a fun and entertain. The reason can be education or something like that. So just to understand, there was my colleagues introduced you like a gamification concept as well as a playful design concept, but common public calls it gamification. So let's stick with the gamification. I just want to aware you about there's a little differences between it. What's the typical reaction of we will play the game in a company? The first, we will do the change, not the play the game. We will do some change. You can, change management and lean thinking and all this stuff is something which is basically against the old processes of ITIL or Prince2. It's something like scary because it's changing. So the first reaction of the, hey, guys, we do the change is rejection. Not in my name, I won't change it, it's stupid, not in our company, we'll do it the same way, it will work somehow. Then it's a panic. Like, oh, really, they mean it. CEO said we do the change and how we can react, let's hide, or I'm not sure, it won't work. It's the first reaction usually, and then it starts like a guerrilla fight. Like, okay, they can change, but I stand on my place and I will boycott it and, only through my corpse. In this company, everything will stay same like last century, I assure you. So it's basically how everyone react, because as an, prime animals, we don't like a change much. We love to be in our comfort zone and, kind of survive more than live a life. And of course, change is more, energy, exploitation more, like it's, you need to invest something into change. And if you are lazy, because we all are lazy, the all technology progress is because we are lazy, so we're trying to make our life easier. So we, of course, fight with it. But what if we change the real life change management into challenge through puzzle? Now it's fun. Fact is, there's some scientific research about it, that if you introduce some activity as a game to the people, and these people are at least a little bit in a mood to, okay, I can play, then it starts on the higher level of acceptance, and they're really looking forward because it's a game. I will explain you later why. It's the game itself is the difference. But once you put it like a puzzle, like something to solve through the gaming process, it's not so scary because you have some facts in your head. If it's set game, you think about how you will solve it. I explain. It's from resistance to cooperation, and that's what the game can deliver to any group, regardless of the age or sex or, I don't know, religion. These are the points. Games are easy to focus. The world is too complex. There is so many choices we need to make every single day that the game is kind of relieving because it's limited by cards, by rules. And the reason is that we say, okay, this is more easy to follow, so yeah, I rather will play than solve my life issues. Then there are the clear rules, and we can trust them. If we say, okay, there are rules like, I don't know, laws, but to be honest, do you believe in laws? I mean, if you don't have enough amount of money, do you believe in law? Or are you more afraid if you see a police? Like, if the first thing you see a police is like, oh, nice, the rule makers, it's nice they are here, the world is safe, or you think like, oh, what did I wrong? Do I have a seat belt? Am I, my lights on? Or did I cross the crossroads on the black? Oh, no. So that's the reason why we like the rules. In fact, we like the rules. Every single of us, we want the world ruled by rules, But on the other hand, we need to trust the rules. And once the rules are broken, we don't believe them. And I don't know exactly how wrong is your political situation here at Slovakia, but in nowadays in Czech Republic we have a national holiday, and it's like international faux pas because our president is fighting with its ministers, and it's not a nice situation. But the signal which spread it to the nation is we don't care about the rules. You have no fear of losing. In a game, if you lose, it's just a game. It's normal that someone will lose in a game, but the good thing, you can start another game, and in that game you can win. I know, you know, Richard Branson and Steve Jobs and all these big minds say, hey, take your business like a game. It's easy, just think about the progress, and in worst case scenario, you'll start again. Yeah, but tell it to your wife if you invest into something like 1 million euro, yeah? So there's no fear of losing in a game, and it's clear who's enemy and who's ally. If it's a game, it's cooperation game, and you all together playing against the board, it's quite simple. If it's the game like a competition, you know how many opponents are in the game. You understand your risks. In business, this is quite hard. You know, people don't tell the truth, trying to cover it somehow. You're not sure how many competitors you're fighting against. And it makes another level of uncertainty. You have a board game over you. You probably know the Ludo, or Člověče nezlob se in Czech language. If you play it, you one simple look, and you know who's winning and who's losing. You know your chances. You know what to do. Just imagine you have the company put on this board game in simplified version, and people understand what's going on. And the clear role, you know what you're doing in the game. And if you don't know it, you ask. You don't start the game without you understand what you are doing in the game. Just imagine you are a humble employee and they push you to start the game without you don't know the rules and you don't know your role. You're just trying to stick somehow and survive. So we came into human-centered design, which is important part. It's whole methodology, how to work with the people. As you are used to design in industry, I strongly believe that putting human-centered design into industry is the first step to the gamification. And the first thing is proper understanding of all sides. You need to understand your people to make a change. You need to take a different perspective. The gamification isn't about, hey, I'm as a sponsor, want you to change my people. It's about to find a way how we can change together. Sorry, if you don't want to change and you only want the others to be changed, you lose already. I'm sorry. You need to be part of the change as well. Which means participation. That's the reason why we want to cooperate in something. In the game, we participate. It's not like, hey, you can play a game, but you can't touch a dice or cards. We will play it instead of you and then tell you you lose or win. Just imagine such game. You say like, oh, not in my name. So if you want the people participate, you need to let them participate. And the last thing is discovering the way. You don't know the rules of the game. Of course, you know the rules of the game, but you don't know how to win a game. It takes you a few games before you start to understand. So it's the same in industry. You need to find a way. You discover it. Even if someone else discovered it before you, you still need to take a pass because experience is, untransferable. So some case studies, how we do it in companies. This is, it's called The Descent. It's a live action role-playing game about members of the crew in the Northern Sea and in a submarine. We change the room into submarine and it trains crisis management because every single player has a role with a different goals, his personal goals, which are really different of the goals of his nation, you mean like a game side, and absolutely different of the goals of the whole submarine mission. So basically no one give a fuck about the submarine, but everyone's winning his own game. And we using it to working with the managers because most of them are playing their own games. They own division, they own department. Do you hear it? Department, and we want to cooperation, but we called it like department and division, and we want to cooperate. And normally, if I go to this bunch of managers and I ask them, hey, let's talk about the problem, I virtually see the finger because they want them to talk about problem. They fear about their own chair. But once it's in a game, they play the game, and then we don't talk about them, but we talk about the roles they played, and they played nicely, so usually submarine crash, then they are able to understand the principles and transfer them into their normal life. They got an alibi for interaction because it's not them, it's just a role. And they are clever enough to understand in their own heads where's the perspective. It's a fast trust building. Trust me, the second day, I'm able to work with them. Usually without this game, it took me like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks to convince them that I'm not an enemy. I'm trying to help them. And of course, it's a strong experience. Lots of players who play the game, which takes 1 day and then 1 day debriefing, still using the words like, hey, don't play it like a submarine. Let's find a solution. Or are you hiding something? Don't play your role. Be clear to me. And these, especially managers from Siemens, still using it after the years because it was such strong experience. This is the game Who Killed Creativity? And it's from Australian company Tyrian, from Andrew Grant. And basically, in Australia as well as in England, this game is called Cluedo, which means who killed some victim. And he using only the board to ask a question, who killed creativity in the company? People follow because from the childhood, they know the rules of the game and they are searching for the killer. And because it's a focus topics and they have only limited choice by cards, they are quite easily find where's the problem. And they understand the core, and then it's easy to follow the path. Yeah, I know, the last minute. This is the last thing. It's we call it Galaxy Corp. It's a rapid prototype. It's in beta version now, but we already have amazing results in a company creating doors for the trains and sky trains and stuff like that called IFE. It's part of the Knorr-Bremse in Brno. And we got a challenge. We need to simulate a change. They've been putting two departments together under one supervision. You can understand how people react. It was almost rebellion. But we prepared them the simulation of the current situation and then developed by themselves through the game how it can look like if they accept the changes. The result was that at the beginning there were like 16 people, and at the beginning half of them were like in the middle, like, okay, show me something, maybe I believe you. It was after half year of work with them. It wasn't just by random. Then there were like 4 people already convinced to from 0 to 10, like 6 to 8. And 6 people who were like, no, in my name. At the end of the simulation, which took whole day, from all this group of people, the worst case was like, okay, I'll try it. But 2 of these people were on level like 9. They say, okay, if it will go this way, I will participate the change because now I understand and it's in my name because I participate. So there were strong aha moments, the feeling of success. So basically the game already changed. It's up to you to adapt and enjoy it. Thanks for attention. Well, thank you. Now I'm going back to the role of facilitator. And we're going for question and answers. There's few of them. And it's quite easy because lots of you just put your finger. So the first question is, how do you assess impact of gamification project in some company? Can you measure money, time, mistakes saved? So guys, I suppose it will be nice when every of you will have a short answer. My answer you already heard. So start. Peter, you want?
Okay, so usually we start, or it's good to consider gamification as a problem-solving tool, right? So on the beginning of every project, we try to define what is the KPI and what is the nature of the problem. And if we define that we want to reduce the spend on the gasoline, then our gamification solution is aiming for that. And that's an easy that's an easy metric to follow. We had a different project where we needed to make sure that the employees are still re-educating themselves or keep up with the new processes. So again, the gamification was aimed to provide this information to the players, and players who achieved some certain level supposed to know more and supposed to have more refreshed knowledge. And again, it was retested by the company, and so maybe to wrap it up, it's always important to identify the measurable outcomes on the beginning of the project so you know whether you are successful or not. So I'm not sure if I answered.
Yeah. So I can say for the learning and training, I think it's very simple to measure because we can see how the player, the person is achieving the goals at the beginning, and after several iterations we can measure it again and we see the progress. So if we, for example, doing some training and some with a manipulation with some machine, we can track it, we can measure it, and we can definitely see for example, the productivity increase or the time it takes, and it's very clear statistics we can of course get from the application.
Some examples just from my cases there. If we take the Stora Enso example, for example, where they have the paper mill and the KPIs, then again, it becomes very easy to measure the value. If they stay within a specific range of the KPI, then they make more money or they use less chemicals, stuff like this. So you can actually measure from a day-to-day, week-to-week basis in euros how much it would actually save you. And this is one of the things that we want to really see as a result of this project. So, yeah.
Well, hope it answered your question. And I really like to thank you, the one who put the next question on the list and all of the others who liked it, because it's really a lovely question. So guys, what is your vision, biggest dream? If you had all the resources, what would you create?
Well, okay. So for industry, there's a lot of interesting examples, but I have a burning desire to see education come a long way with gamification, and it's happening right now. We see things like Khan Academy, for example, which is an online tool for getting in contact with different information, getting educated. They're using some gamification mechanics that are pretty interesting. I think there's a lot that can be used. Peter, you also mentioned how the school has like the structure of a game, but the mechanics are wrong. We need to dial that a little bit, and I think we can see amazing results if we do that, both for industry, but for any kind of education, really.
Same here. If I had all the resources, then I would probably try to redesign our education system in Slovakia to be able to be playful and produce much more empathy and critical thinking and proactive and pro-social leaders. So that would be awesome.
For me, I would definitely invest in the future. So one thing is the education, because that's something which is not something we can easily monetize in short term, but it's so important because the challenges are big for the future. And the other thing is also probably the social aspects of the way how we can improve, and in our context through the games or gamificated applications, we can improve the social relationship. So the games are a social tool. It's not anymore something. There's still some single-player games, but it's mostly obvious that the games in single-player, people want to talk about it later, about their experience. But I think its definition, games are about interactions between people, and this is something where the games can help. And I think if I would invest it for the future in some with a lot of resources, I would invest in social games, definitely.
I personally, for me, it's not connected with gamification because for myself, gamification is just a tool. But what I really appreciate is that people in every employee is considered to be a human with its needs and wishes. And I would like to change the whole human resources. Let's say start with calling people resources. I mean, start to stop calling people resources, at least call them capital if you need to use the financial word. But to change how people are behave in the structures, not like just numbers, but like people. So it's my biggest mission when I'm using gamification, but it's my big dream. So, next question. Games are fun because you don't have any real responsibility. Isn't it an issue for HR? Oh, I answered first, and then I let it just not to follow myself in each thing. I think it depends how you look on the game. You can't only play. There's a real life, and real life is basically a game with difficult choices and kinda, blurry results in the future. Some results you can see in affordable time, like 9 months or 18 years. Some results maybe will be delivered like 100 years after you're dead. So I believe that games are only part of the life. It's necessary part, but it's just a game. But it's an educational tool, and you can try, you can learn, and you can enjoy it, and then transform it into something in your life. The problem is if the transformation isn't proper. But if the transformation is proper, maybe it's a responsibility for HR. For me, definitely it's a responsibility of designer of the activity. Then it can work, and people take the real responsibility for the results of the game. It's up to you guys.
I think that's a really good question, although it's kind of tricky, but that makes it good. I think the point is that when we work with HR, you have to make sure that you align the company goals that have some responsibilities with the inner motivation of the employees. If you manage to connect these two triggers or the triggers on the side of the employees with the goals of the HR or of the company, and use gamification as a way of communicating, then I think it could work. So yeah, but that's for a longer discussion, I guess.
So for me, it's also, I think it's a really tricky question, but for me what's important is that we remove the constraint of the responsibility in the games, but we are freeing the person to actually try things that maybe in his real world he's not, for example, not really able to do. He cannot try more things he could explore, or he is just scared. So I think the biggest problem in the company is that people which are scared to do some changes in the company or bring their ideas or to talk, and by removing the responsibility, these people can learn this and they can try it. And the main key for the success, I think, is that they can fail. So in the real life, they're punished if they fail, and so they are more scared to do some initiatives and being proactive. But in the games, they can fail, and that I think should be rewarded, because by the failure we learn, and that's the only way I think we can encourage them to actually go that way. So I think for me it's very important to remove that responsibility, but they learn through that because they will be less constrained to actually try and fail and learn through that.
Yeah, I just like this idea of learning from failing. Going back again to the virtual reality example with the Gyproc, the industry, where we haven't implemented a gamification mechanic system in the virtual reality simulation right now. It's just a simulation that shows you how the machine works. But one of the ideas that we're kicking around right now is maybe talking about wanting to fail and learn from your mistakes, is maybe you should do everything wrong. So that's the goal of the game, that you go in virtual reality and you just trash the machine, you push all the wrong buttons, you make all the mistakes, because then you learn how not to do. So maybe you can score points for actually learning from those mistakes. Then of course you would have to balance that with doing it right a couple of times, so you don't get that idea into your head when you're doing it for real. So, but it's some interesting concepts there.
So next question is, I think, mostly for you, Peter, but if some of you want to answer, I pass. Virtual reality is impressive, but how do you handle physical interaction? Especially in industry, you need hands-on experience.
Yeah, okay, so, well, VR is just very interesting in a lot of aspects. I could keep talking about it all day, but yes, you do need a hands-on experience in some specific things that you do in industry. A lot of the things is just good for VR to show information in a more interactive and interesting way. What we see is that the input devices that we see from VR now with the touch controllers and it brings you a long way. A lot of people look at the controllers and they go, this can't possibly represent my hands in VR. It doesn't make sense. But then they put on the virtual reality goggles, they get the controllers in their hands, and first they go, oh, this is weird. Then they go, okay, this is really cool. And then they completely forget that they're holding controllers. All of a sudden you can have hands that grab objects and it just feels natural. So doing a lot of the motions in virtual reality would go a long way into mimicking what's happening in real life. And of course there's a billion startups with the introduction of this virtual reality revolution that's coming, where there's a lot of startups doing things like force feedback on your fingers, where you put a glove on and it actually pulls your finger if you're touching a button, for example. They're working with the vibration and stimulation of the fingertips that makes you feel certain fabrics and textures and stuff like this. A lot of that stuff is very hardcore, but the idea is if you get these controllers, you can design a lot of interesting applications just with that. It's a good basic idea. Yeah. Anyone else? No?
For me, just very quickly, I think this is a big challenge because the virtual reality, it's a new media and there's a lot of work on the user experience, but I mean the user interface with the content, and there's a lot of devices, but I think we still have a lot of work in this domain, in this area.
Well, I'm very sorry. The last two questions will remain because we are running out of the steam. So I'd like to thank you for listening. Most of you stay until now, which we really appreciate. Trust me, from this perspective, it's really pleasant experience. And we right now will be ending. There is a warning, a heroic quest for you, young knights. There will be a closing ceremony. King Arthur and all the knights of the round table will be there. You know, some people from European Union, I don't remember their names, but they are really important and they want to be heard. And it's kind of harsh to not be listened if you want to have something to say. So please move to closing ceremony, which is in room A, somewhere there. And there will be an obstacle. There will be lots of food along the way. But I warn you, it's poisoned. So please don't take a food. Follow the path to the room A. Enjoy the closing ceremony. They promised it will be short, so if it's going to be long, just, you know, leave. But just now, thank you for your attention. Let's go to closing ceremony. Have a nice afternoon.